They should have just named it Mystical Space Typhoon Dragon. What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. Now, today I wanted to bring to you a card discussion on the brand new TCG exclusive that just got announced, Tornado Dragon. Tornado Dragon has a lot of hype surrounding it, and for good reason, because the card is really fucking strong. Now, I don't think it's absurdly broken by any means, but I definitely think it's going to be a staple in the rank 4 toolbox moving forward. So, Tornado Dragon is a rank 4 wind worm type monster, which is kind of weird because it's a dragon, but it's a worm, so I guess worms are dragons. I don't fucking know. That's just like semantics at that point. 2100 attack, 2000 defense, so it's slightly stronger than Castel, and I guess 2000 defense is somewhat beefy, I guess. And it requires 2 level 4 monsters to make, which means it's generic, so that's really good. Now, the effect reads, once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, target 1 spell or trap card on the field, and destroy it. So, like I kind of said at the beginning of the video, Tornado Dragon is essentially Mystical Space Typhoon in a built-in monster effect, which is really strong because the rank 4 pool is kind of, and has always really lacked, a really good source of back row removal, and Tornado Dragon kind of fits the gap. Now, prior to Tornado Dragon's release, our most dedicated form of back row removal for the rank 4 toolbox was Diamond Direwolf, and a lot of people are making comparisons between Tornado Dragon and Diamond Direwolf, saying that Tornado Dragon's basically going to just outright power creep Diamond Direwolf, but I wouldn't necessarily say that that's the case. Diamond Direwolf and Tornado Dragon each fit their own niche roles, and I'm going to explain why. So looking at Diamond Direwolf, sure, with Diamond Direwolf, you know, it's going to pop itself, and you're going to be popping a card. So technically, it's like you're detaching 2 materials to pop 1 card rather than detaching 1. But Diamond Direwolf has the flexibility that you can also pop monsters in addition to spells and traps. And having the flexibility like that means you might not have to use your Castel in certain instances as well. So that can be very good. And then you also have the fact that maybe you want to get both of the Xyz materials underneath the Direwolf into the graveyard. Look at a deck like ABC's. Most of the time, the ABC deck just makes Direwolf, not even to get the Direwolf onto the board or really to clear anything, but knowingly the fact that the Direwolf's gonna die and getting the materials underneath it into the graveyard to summon a Dragon Buster, and then you just happen to take out a card with it thanks to Direwolf's effect. So in terms of flexibility, I would say Direwolf is a little bit more flexible because it has a much wider array of options that it can hit, but if we're talking about strictly spell and trap removal, then obviously Tornado Dragon is much fucking better at its job than Diamond Direwolf could ever imagine that it would want to be. Take this as an example. So, a lot of people joke that playing Diamond Direwolf is kind of like just baiting out Solemn Strike, because if you're going against your opponent and they see a Direwolf, if they have the strike, they're pretty much forced to use it because they know they're going to lose something one way or another. So, it's always been a long, just standing joke that Diamond Direwolf is just Solemn Strike bait. But now the cool thing is, if you play Tornado Dragon and it doesn't immediately get Solemn Striked, then there's a really good chance that your Tornado Dragon's effect is going to get off not just the first time, but the second time as well. I know there's stuff like Dimensional Barrier as well, but that only lasts a turn, and then when your opponent's turn comes around, since Tornado Dragon is a quick effect, you can just detach and pop another back row as well. So that's really, really cool. Now, another thing about Tornado Dragon that's really interesting is that it's a very defensive card in a lot of ways as it is an offensive card, because you could hypothetically make Tornado Dragon kind of as a deterrent from your opponent to set back row, from them playing Pendulum Scales, or even from them activating continuous spells or field spells, because knowing that the Tornado Dragon can immediately pop them, the continuous spell or the field spell isn't going to fully resolve its effect properly, and especially since so many cards, especially now in the meta nowadays, have once per turn clauses, that means that they're not going to be able to activate another one for the duration of the turn, and Tornado Dragon actually successfully did its job. So I really like that it has the ability to really act as this really cool defensive option, as well as when you're wanting to go on the offense and clearing out the opponent's back row altogether. That's really, really cool when you consider it's built into a monster effect. Now, one other thing I think that not a lot of people are really looking at is the fact that Tornado Dragon can also pop your own cards. Now, that's beneficial primarily for artifacts, I would say. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Being able to trigger your own artifacts like Artifact Scythe, Artifact Morale Tack, or anything else like that during your opponent's turn means that you can scythe them out of the extra deck or pop something with Morale Tack. Sure, we've got stuff like Crooked Cook for that already, but Tornado Dragon does it much more efficiently. You also still have a body on the board that can also potentially pop another back row in the following turn after that, and it's just really good all around. Had format would have absolutely loved this card and might have played it in multiple copies if it were around at that time. You could also use it on something like Cosmo Town as well if you're playing Cosmo. There's these other niche cards that you could potentially hit with Tornado Dragon to trigger their effects like Cosmo Town as well, but I don't want to go too much into those because that's just getting super specific. But if you play an archetype that does have those similar types of effects, then Tornado Dragon is going to really benefit you. Now, I think it's really important to look at Tornado Dragon in the context of the meta, because I feel that's really going to define how good this card really ends up being. I mentioned artifacts earlier. Now, the thing about the artifact engine is, while Tornado Dragon is an excellent addition, if you want to call it as a complement to the artifact engine, the issue is the deck that's currently running artifacts, which is Windwitch Invoked Artifact, doesn't really have a solid way to get into rank 4s. The deck is primarily comprised of the Windwitch engine, which are level 3s, mainly with their focus of going into Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. You've got Alistair and the Invoked engine, which Alistair's level 4, but you don't really have other level 4s to complement him to get into the Tornado Dragon. And then you have all the artifacts, which are level 5, so there's not really any synergy there either. So the best deck in the meta that could probably make use of Tornado Dragon outside of just popping cards can't really utilize it. You know, if you're playing like maybe a Zodiac artifact variant, then definitely Tornado Dragon's gonna make a nice addition to the extra deck, just as another means to pop cards like Artifact Scythe much more efficiently, and not having to rely on other things like maybe MST or Artifact Ignition or things like that. Now, when you're looking at opposing decks, going up against Zodiac, I mean, Zodiac plays a fair amount of back row. They've got their dimensional barriers, their solemn strikes, things like that. And like we mentioned before in the Diamond Dyer versus Tornado Dragon example, you know, if they have the strike, both cards are going to bait out the strike. And if they have the dimensional barrier, what's really cool is that Tornado Dragon is going to still be able to do something on the following turn, whereas Diamond Direwolf will not. So it kind of plays through Dimensional Barrier to an extent, and then if it pops any other back row in addition to that, that's just a bonus. But other than that, it's not really going to be popping a whole lot than something, let's say, like Twin Twisters wouldn't also be able to achieve on its own. Then you look at the other popular meta decks, Infernoids and 60-card Infernoids for that matter, are not playing any back row except for maybe Void Feast. So, I mean, unless you want to make Tornado Dragon to proactively stop Void Feast, I guess that's really strong, because if you don't have really any back row removal, Void Feast is just going to eat you alive. But other than that, that deck plays 0 back row. Then you look at Paleozoic, which is still a strong option as well, and Paleozoic is a very back row intensive deck, and I really like Tornado Dragon here, because if your opponent starts setting their Paleo monsters, in the end phase you can just chip one away and maybe combo it with a Twin Twister you already have in hand or something like that, and you can really wipe away some back row. It's also good too for being able to disrupt Paleozoic mid-chain to prevent the Paleozoics from resurrecting themselves from the graveyard, so that's a cool interaction as well. Then you move on to some of the more Maximum Crisis, or rather post-Maximum Crisis decks. We've got Dinosaurs, which are going to be much more relevant once the True Kings and Dragonic Diagram are released, and again, It's a deck that doesn't really play any back row, so Tornado Dragon doesn't really do a whole lot unless you're trying to pop Dragonic Diagram, but Dragonic Diagram isn't limited to once per turn, so that's not really stopping a lot. Then you also have the True Kings, which the True King pure archetype, the spells and traps in that archetype actually gain benefits when they're sent from the spell and trap zone to the graveyard, so Tornado Dragon is extremely inefficient in this instance, and is pretty much ill-advised to use against that matchup altogether, unless you're really trying to prevent something from being activated in an attempt to just stop something from getting worse than it's already going to get once your Tornado Dragon pops their back row to begin with. So overall, looking at Tornado Dragon, it's an incredibly solid rank 4, and like I said, it's a welcome addition to the rank 4 toolbox. I just think it's almost a little bit too late for this card to really shine. I feel like if we had this card maybe a year or two ago, you would be seeing this card all over a place. Like I said, hat format is really where this card would have shined. I also really think it's limited in its abilities. The fact that it's only a once per turn clause is really unfortunate, because could you imagine if this card wasn't once per turn and you could pop 2 back row on the initial summon? That would just be fucking crazy. Or if you leave the once per turn clause in, maybe at that point you do that, but then it banishes the spell and trap, almost like Cosmic Cyclone, rather than just destroying it. That makes it much more effective against things like artifacts, like Paleozoics, or other things like that. But I guess if we're going to go that route, then maybe you're going to have to rename this card to Cosmic Cyclone Dragon. But guys, that's just my opinion on Tornado Dragon as a whole. Really solid card. You're going to see it definitely getting played in some form or another. Some people might swap out maybe their second or even initial copy of Diamond Direwolf for it. But overall, really good card, but not like anything amazingly or absurdly broken. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And also be sure to back me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.